because I'm afraid if I mess up, I will be vaporized with laser beam eyes.
You might, but I mean, good news is that nothing will come out until July. So by then, y'all are already like, I'm already in like, you're already in college, and I'm already like in summer mode, probably teaching a teacher training actually during that time. Okay.
The thing is that your summer mode is still teaching.
It is,
That's true.
which makes me want to throw up. Okay, so my plan was to work through this in order, but how many of you are planning to stay for all three? Like, you want to stay for all three no matter what? Okay. How many of you, so do you may just work through, like, in order, like synthesis, and we can work through as much as we want with synthesis? Okay. So let me start with synthesis.
Have you started the recording yet?
Yes, I just started the recording. Okay, so let me start with synthesis. So I pulled a synthesis that I haven't even looked at yet. It's actually from our practice test online, and I pulled it because it makes me think that because College Board gave it to us as a practice test, and this was last year before we knew that COVID hit and before we knew we were only getting one essay. So this makes me think that this is going to be along the lines of what we'll see this year. Now we had 3 practice tests that were offered. One was this one. This one is space exploration. One was actually about like the value of small talk. If you were with me and I talked about like that one argument that was about polite speech, there was one about small talk, the value of small talk in society. And then the other one was about, meatless Mondays. Like at your school, like in our community, like the value of it, right? So all those things, if you think about that, if you think about like Meatless Mondays, space, and small talk, those are, I mean, maybe not so much small talk, but the other two are things that are pretty current, right? So that's why I pulled space exploration, because I feel like it's pretty current. Plus I also feel it's kind of difficult for many of us, except for the freaking space engineer over here. Okay. So my plan is just to walk through and do all the things that I would, okay? So space exploration has historically been led by government programs with public funding, but in 2004, the United States legalized privatized space travel. Since then, private industries have been investigating ways to make exploring space both affordable and profitable. Critics of privatized space exploration believe that the costs of space travel are too prohibitive to be worthwhile for the general public. All right, so I'm looking at like this idea of government programs, right? So when I think of government programs, I think of, can y'all see that okay? I think of like there are limitations in what can be done, right? Government. So I think about that. I think about like limited funding. But then I also see that public funding, so money does come from private citizens or organizations. Now I'm noticing, but, right, there's some change. Legalized, privatized space travel. What does that mean? So I start thinking, like, what does that mean? What does privatized space travel mean? Commercial, yep. And then I also think, okay, what value does that bring to us, right? So originally, like, space exploration, like, why do we as a government, like, why does our government explore space? Like, what do we gain from it? What's our purpose?
It was initially done for reasons of, like, sort of international prestige and sort of an arms race during the Cold War.
Yep.
To try to assert dominance over other nations.
So I want to think about, like, what do I know, right? International prestige. We also, like, discover, like, new discoveries, right? So when we start bringing in privatized stuff, what does it mean that if things are commercial?
It means they're going to be done for money.
Okay. Sarah, what'd you say? Okay, so it could be more competitive. Now listen,
Hello, Bronco.
if you get here,
Hallway. You should be in the classroom for tutorials. Practice.
you should be in classrooms for tutorials.
Or headed home.
Oh crap, I used to be able to pull a plug and now I can't pull a plug. So if you get here and you can't think, what am I doing for all this? I'm creating like ways into my argument, right? For myself. If you can't come up with any of this, then you just move past it, right? Since then, private industries have been investigating ways to make exploring space both affordable and profitable. I think making it affordable is going to be difficult. Like for the average person, right? So remember how we said we look for positions. So this is one side. Critics of it believe that the costs of space travel are too prohibitive to be worthwhile for the general public. What does that mean, too prohibitive?
It means that they cost way too much to be actually worthwhile.
Yeah. So that's the other side. Okay, carefully read the following 6 sources, right? We can skip that. Write an essay that synthesizes material from at least 3, but I say what?
4.
Okay. And develops your position. Here it is, right? Develop your position on the extent to which privatizing space exploration is beneficial. Now, I want to look something up. I don't even think we're going to hear to the extent to which. What does the extent to which mean?
You have to say, like, in your thesis, this is very impactful, or it's not, like.
But what is the extent to which? So it's different than.
It's like a maximum, right?
It means it's directly asking you for a qualified argument.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So I can't find my binder. I don't think that we will see. I think it will just be take a position on the need to privatize space exploration, or take a position on privatizing space exploration being beneficial, right? So just in case, the extent to which means it, like, only in these certain circumstances. But you'll probably just have your position on the idea that privatizing space exploration is beneficial, right? Okay, so we've deconstructed that. Now what do I need to do? Okay, so I need to ask my what questions. So what is beneficial about, I'm going to say space exploration first, right? Then I'm also going to say, like, what is beneficial about privatizing something. So you may not understand privatizing and space exploration, but you can look at it and go, okay, why would somebody want to take something away from the government and give it to, like, a commercial setting, right? Like, what value is there in that, right? So then my other what question would be, what is beneficial about privatizing? Can I spell it? Privatizing space exploration. This is going to be my true thesis sentence, right? Response to that. Okay, so now that I've done that, now what?
You need your expertise.
Okay, so if we aren't going to go to college to be a NASA scientist, he's like sitting in the seat going, yippee! The rest of us are like, we're screwed, right? Okay, so where is my level of expertise? Okay, so Donovan, I need you to hold on to this question and let us like look at. Okay, so if we don't have a level of expertise in this field, we need to ask our questions. So what do we need to know in order to become an expert? Talk to a partner real quick. You got like 30 seconds. What's one question that you need to ask in order to become an expert in space exploration or in privatizing space exploration? All right, what questions did y'all come up with?
What we've gained from space exploration?
Okay, good. Okay, good. What else? Because that could be, we could translate, if we've gained this through the government, right? How could allowing a private company change that? Would it open up more opportunities? Would it open up more knowledge? What would it do for us? Okay, what else did y'all come up with?
How much does it cost the government for space exploration?
Okay. What else?
Like resources, like what the
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. So like what resources does the government have or need?
What are private companies actually interested in doing in space?
Oh. Well, and I think I would extend that, like, what are private companies wanting to do that the government can't? Right? And there might be things that the government can't do because of like laws and I'm like totally out of my depths, but like laws and regulations that maybe private companies are able to, right? Because they don't have a governing body like the government. Anything else? Now, what if you get there and you're like, I don't even know where to start asking questions? What do you do? Yep, you just go to the sources. Okay? So now that I'm done, right? I can't, if I could, I would start thinking about like, why is privatizing space exploration beneficial? I would start answering my whys. But at this point, I don't know, right? If I don't know, then I'm leaving this because the whys are going to be my reasons for my body paragraphs, right? Okay. So because I don't know, I'm going to jump in. Now, Donovan, do you have any insight? Like, is there anything that you could think off the top of your head, like why it would be beneficial for like private companies to do this?
Because the government is really limited by getting votes to do it, and they're also not really driven by any sort of profit motive. They're not really going to make any money, and a lot of the things that are beneficial about going into space travel, at least in terms of how they can help people.
Like research and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah, but there's also economic benefits in space with resources we can get that the government can't really take use of. And then right now there's also like space mining. The government can't really invest in that in such an extent that a private company can.
Oh,
And
interesting.
There's a lot of regulations in space.
Yeah.
That like
The government has to abide by.
Well, yeah, due to like international treaties, especially with like China and everything.
Interesting.
Especially due to like the race in the Cold War.
Yeah,
Interesting.
The government definitely makes it a lot more political, whereas a company doesn't. And currently you can't own land in space. No country can own land in space.
Right.
So when a private company goes up there, it's not really getting on anybody's other country's nerves in a way that another country could possibly be.
So interesting. Okay, so let's jump in and look at this, okay? So remember when we go in, we want to quickly look at the sources and we want to look at like the titles to see if maybe For this one, we're going to look at, like, does it give us any reasons that we can look at now, right? And we also want to look at our italics, and we want to figure out which ones we want to read, right? Commercial space, hearing before the Subcommittee on Space, Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Okay, so what I'm noticing is commercial space. So this is going to be like pro-private, right? And I'm noticing that this is from the government, so it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to read.
Isn't Kevin McCarthy a senator?
Yes. Yeah. The following, there you go, is excerpted from the testimony of a United States representative during a congressional hearing. Good Lord, it's the end of the day. Okay? So, there's one. Now I'm going to go read the next one. John Schwartz, Thrillionaires, the New Space Capitalists. Okay, so I can't tell if this is pro or con. The following is excerpted from a newspaper article about space entrepreneurship. Okay, so then I'm going to look at, this is going to probably be opportunities that space can offer, right? See how the italicized part is giving me a little bit? This is from the New York Times. Spaceport, this one is a book, right? Because I could tell. Spaceport Earth, the re-envision of spaceflight. The following is excerpted from a book about advances in spaceflight. Okay, I don't know what that's going to do for me. Federal Aviation Administration, the annual compendium of commercial space transportation. The following is excerpted from a government report about commercial flights to space. So this is a report that the government did on, like, probably costs, right? Suborbital reusable vehicles are commercially developed reusable space vehicles that travel just beyond the threshold of space, about 100 kilometers above the Earth. Okay, that one looks like it's quick, right? So it's about space travel, like travel to space for, like, people, regular people. Okay, I think I like that one. Their lowest cost vaccination yet. Vacation, sorry, I'm stuck in vaccinations. Their lowest cost vacation yet. This is from 2011. The following is a cartoon about space tourism. So remember, it's a political cartoon, right? So the one thing that we want to look at for political cartoons when you are looking at them is they point out flaws in society, right? It's satirical in nature. So because it's satire, it will point out flaws in society. So don't take this as face value. You have to take this as what flaw is it pointing out. It's quick, resort area. Why is this the cheapest vacation that they've had? Because there's nothing to do. So you're not going to spend any money, right? Okay. So meaning that I can quickly look at this one and go like you could get there, but then what, right? So I can quickly look at that one, and then I'm going to look at the last one. The privatization of space when things go wrong. Okay, so now this is going to be like against privatizing it. The following is excerpted from an editorial by a member of an international security policies think tank. Okay, so is there going to be, so first of all, editorial is going to be all opinion. Right? There may be facts in there, but it's going to be opinion-based. International Security Policies Think Tank. Is there a bias there? Yes, right? Okay, so if you had to go in, where would you go in? Where would you start reading?
Maybe go look at the graph really quickly so you can get some base information.
Yep, I might look at the graph quickly. I'm probably going to look at pro. I'm probably going to look at source A, source B. Probably going to skip C. I'll look at D. And then possibly E to see if like anything that I've already written ties into E. If not, then I'll look at F, right, to find my 4 sources. Does that make sense? All right, what do you want me to do with this? Do you want to... It's 3:06. Do you want to read through all of these?
I would rather spend more time on the other.
Okay. Okay, so, but what I like that you did, or that we did, is we went through and we looked at the bias of each one of these. Does that make sense? And looked at, like, instead of working my way through in order and reading the sources in order, I have now decided which one are the most important, right? From these, I will say that that there will be reasons of why, there will probably be explicit reasons of why privatizing is good, and then also why privatizing is bad. So automatically, the other thing that I look at is the one that's like, why privatizing is bad. I could probably use that source to counter another source. Does that make sense? So after I find two sources that work together, I might go read this one to see if it counters another one, right? Because then that way I have two that shake hands and two that fight against each other.
Okay, so let's say we get to the census tomorrow and it's like we're super lost. And we have to use the sources as our argument, like we go and look.
That's fine. Yeah.
Would you say like try putting as much voice before you cite your source to say like, oh, that's you, and then your source comes?
Yeah, here's the thing. If you were getting 4s and 5s on your synthesis, like, or possibly a 6, if you can put your analysis first and say this is supported by the New York Times article, blah, 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 where it states whatever, that's fine. If not, if that's too much to think about, then just go in your chunk status. The one thing that I would review that I don't think I told all of my classes today is I would review like our rhetorical precis sentence, right? In the article by so-and-so, right? From the New York Times, it states that what the big argument is, and then get into your piece of evidence. Don't focus on that. Because think, when y'all went into wind farms, how many of y'all knew about wind farms before you started reading about wind farms? Nobody, right? Like, so don't feel like if you get something that you don't have a level of expertise that you're screwed, because you've already done it with wind farms, right? So don't worry about that. You did it with eminent domain. You didn't actually go through it, right? But the eminent domain one I gave you last week was the same way. Like, you had no like outside knowledge for that. This one, you probably don't have any outside knowledge. Now, the video that I did with Friedis that I thought was the one thing that he said is in the conclusion, he tries to get his kids to pull in some kind of story. So even though like you don't have any experience with space exploration, you can always like tie in a story at the end and the conclusion about as a child, like it's just that unknown, like the stories of Star Wars and all the, like you grew up like with this idea of like space being something that can't be, that's not achievable for like the average man, because all those stories were always like futuristic, but here we are in the future now actually considering it, right? So you can kind of tie that idea in, right? Unless you're like these nerds and they know like laws and regulations that are happening, right? Then they're super excited, right? Yes, when y'all are at NASA, when you're at NASA, Donovan, just shout me out. This is NASA to space whatever. Miss Smith, hey. NASA to, right? Just give me a little shout out. Okay, so does that make sense? Like, know that tomorrow, just plan on the fact that you probably will not have any idea about the topic at hand, and that's totally fine. We have a plan of how to work through it, right? But keep in mind, don't go over your 40 minutes, right? So when I get here and I start writing, I write 2:15 to 1:20. That's my hour, right? From 2 hours and 15 minutes to 1:20, I have to be out at 1:20. I have to be out at an hour and 20 minutes. Don't go past that. Right? Okay. Any other questions? Ask it now.
How does that work on my timing?
You're just going to have double.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll write down yours before you leave. I'll write down yours. I have to think about it. I don't think I can do it off the top of my head. Okay, pull out your rhetorical analysis. All right, we have not done this one, right? I keep asking y'all, like, we haven't. Okay. All right. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi led a non-violent march in India protesting Britain's colonial monopoly on and taxation of an essential resource, salt. The Salt March, as it came to be known, was a triggering moment for the larger civil disobedience movement that eventually won India independence from Britain in 1947. Shortly before the Salt March, Gandhi had written to Viceroy Lord Irwin, the representative of the British Crown in India. The passage below is the conclusion of that letter. Read the passage carefully. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze the rhetorical choices Gandhi makes to present his case to Lord Irwin, right? Now, what you will have in the future is this is not like our closed thesis, right? Or our closed, our stable prompt. You will have his purpose in there, right? You will have either the understand or the do, right? So we have to ask, what does he want him to understand? And what does he want him to do? Y'all with me? So for our thesis, we would be given one of those in the prompt. Either the understand or the do. Yes? Okay. All right. So remember, I need to go in and create my rhetorical situation, right? All right. So here's my speaker. And we're going to start talking about Gandhi. What do you know about Gandhi?
He was an inspiration for the civil rights movement that occurred in the United States.
Yep. What else? Y'all don't know anything about Gandhi.
He was one of the founders of contemporary nonviolent protests.
Right, look. Civil disobedience movement that eventually won India independence from Britain. Right?
You can use that to tie into like people, if you know about him, like what's his name?
Thoreau.
That's what I was gonna say.
Thoreau is where it kind of started, was transcendentalism, right? But you don't want to go too far back unless it's mentioned in here, right? Transcendentalism, Thoreau, civil disobedience, then to Gandhi, then to Martin Luther King, then to current, right? Okay, so he led a nonviolent march in India. Okay, so this is like the context. This is the situation that's happening. Nonviolent, what does that mean? Peaceful. Yep, peaceful protests. Protesting Britain's colonial monopoly on and taxation of salt. Is this reminding you of anything? Yep.
Sandbag. Tea, paper, literally almost everything was colonies at the time.
So what we want to be careful of is we want to be careful of not to go too far, right? Because if we go too far, then we're looking at, you're adding in outside evidence, right? This is not a synthesis where we want to have outside evidence. But we know at this point that Britain is known for this, right? This is not new that Britain is starting to tax things that the people that they are ruling over need. This is historically accurate that they continue to do this, okay? The Salt March, as it came to be known, was a triggering moment for the larger civil disobedience movement that eventually won India independence from Britain in 1947. Okay, so this was if you look at the exigence, right? What was his exigence? The exigence was the taxation, right? But notice that this was going to be, the outcome would be their freedom. All right, so when we look at now who our audience is, remember we did the letter the other day and we were like, okay, we can't do audience to the third level, right? So I said we have to look at and say, okay, what can we say about this person? So since this is our audience, we usually would go to the third level, but we can't because it's a letter, right? So what can you say? What can you say about somebody that is in power? Remember with Abigail Adams, we looked at and we said, okay, Abigail Adams is a mother. She is writing to her son. What do we know about how a mother would approach something? What do we know about how a son would take it? So if we look at Gandhi, we know that he's an inspiration for more than just the civil rights movement. that he has this idea of civil disobedience. So what can you guess? How is he going to approach this letter before we even get in? As somebody that is representing his people to somebody that is wronging his people. How is he going to approach this? How must he approach his argument?
Very careful.
Okay, he has to be careful. He has to be more than nice. Right? Yeah. Polite. He has to be calm. So if he is all about civil disobedience, he must calmly and reasonably argue what he means, right? Because he cannot be aggressive, because that would go against what he believes in. All right. So if Lord Irwin, as the representative for Great Britain, what obstacles is Gandhi going to have to overcome? So what can we say about Lord Irwin?
He's probably never faced oppression.
Okay, good. What else?
He probably profits in some way off of what's happening in India.
Yeah, I mean, Great Britain does, period, right? Okay, anything else? Do you see what I'm doing here, though? Where we don't have the third audience to go into, we look at, like, what are the two different perspectives that are going to have to come together in order to understand this, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so,
Like a representative from them in India.
yes.
It's not like writing to him in Britain, then he's probably greatly hated already.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, because he's a British crown in India, right? So he's probably already hated.
So maybe with Gandhi trying to have him see his perspective, he's coming at it from, hey dude, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, what's going to benefit you and benefit me, right? Yeah.
Like a almost helpful perspective on it.
Yep. So then what questions would be, right? Like, what is the case that Gandhi makes? And for the love of all things holy, spell things correctly when it's given to you. I can't tell you how many different spellings of Gandhi we got this year. What is the case that Gandhi makes? What does he want him to understand? What does he want him to do? All right, so now that I've done that, now what do I do? Number. 1. I know 1. I have 2. I served 3. Okay, so I'm already noticing I have, I served, I know. Those are actions, right? The plan 4, reasonable. Whoops. I have 5. This letter 6. If I'm guessing, what do I guess? Yeah, I would say here. And that fits a couple things for us, right? It fits the shift between lengths of body paragraphs. It fits right in between. And it fits the break between 2 columns. So it's like fits all 3 for us, right? Okay, what do you want me to do?
Can you just go through the whole thing and break down?
Oh, just keep working? Sure.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Teacher appreciation was last week, right? Okay, here we go. You did. I got cookies and I ate cookies for a long time. All right. I know that in embarking on nonviolence, I shall be running what might fairly be termed a mad risk. So who's that mad risk from, right? And note, it says fairly, so he already knows that he's like behind the curve. But the victories of truth have never been won without risk. Often of the gravest characters. So what is he admitting? He's already admitting, I know that this may be termed as mad. And it's fair enough that this is going to be mad. However, the victories of truth have never been won without risks. Often of the gravest characters. Why would something be a grave risk? What is he risking?
His life and
Yes.
the people following him.
Sorry, I'm checking to see if that's my kid. Okay. Conversion of a nation that has consciously or unconsciously preyed upon another, far more numerous, far more ancient, and no less cultured than itself, is worth any amount of risk. This, I'm looking at this, counters that statement, right? This idea of conversion, what does that mean? Conversion of a nation. I think it's even more than that. Conversion of a nation that has consciously or unconsciously preyed upon another. Who is the nation that he's talking about?
Great Britain.
Yes.
And change their whole value and the principle of how they rule.
Yeah, conversion means like you're not just changing somebody's mind. Like conversion means like you're changing the inner workings. Like that is something like conversion therapy, right? Is to change somebody's thoughts, their morality, their values, right? So he says conversion of a nation, this is Great Britain, that has consciously or subconsciously, or sorry, unconsciously. Now this is not sub, this is consciously or unconsciously. That's worse. That you have no conscience, right? Prayed. I'm gonna nerd out. Listen to the language. Conversion usually relates to religion, right? You convert. Prayed, play on words, not P-R-A-Y, P-R-E-Y, play on words, right? Preyed upon another. So he's setting Great Britain up to be preying upon somebody else. Usually prey upon people that are weaker, right? He says, preyed upon another, far more numerous. So India has more people than Great Britain. Far more ancient. We've been around a lot longer than you have. And no less cultured. P.S. by the way, we have a lot more culture than you do. Right? Is worthy of any amount of risk. So I am based in nonviolence. However, if it comes to that, and if it means death, then it's worth it, right? I have deliberately used the word conversion. Oh. For my ambition is no less than to convert the British people through nonviolence. So this is what he wants. And thus to make them see the wrong they have done to India.
Would that be the do statement, the to convert?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like his purpose right here.
And then I think that the see the wrong is the understand.
Yeah. I do not seek to harm your people. So if I'm going through this going, God, I don't know like what things to do, look at the verbs that are being used, right? I do not want. I do not seek. Look at the verbs. And if you don't even know that, you could just look at the action. I do not seek to do this. I do want. So this, you could also look at like the contrast in action. That's a choice. He contrasts the action that he wants to take and that he does not want to take. I want to serve them even as I want to serve my own. I believe I've always served them. Them being Great Britain. So what is he appealing to here? If you're looking at, right, if you're looking at like how does he have to address Gandhi? How does he have to address Lord Irwin? He has to show that he's always been the good person, right? His people have always served Great Britain. Yeah. Yeah. I served them up until 1919 blindly. What does that mean, blindly?
We supported Britain without knowing what they were doing to India.
Really without knowing and without questioning, right? But when my eyes were opened and I conceived non-cooperation, the object still was to serve them. So even after he saw the bad, still served. I employed, so look at these again, our actions, right? I employed the same weapon. That's a contrast, right, to his ideas. I employed the same weapon that I have in all humanity, successfully used against the dearest members of my family. Do you really think it's a weapon, a physical weapon? No. If I have equal love for your people, so now look at this. What's the weapon? Love. So again, there I'm looking at contrasts. You can't continue to say contrast before you could talk about action verbs. Now you can talk about contrasting ideas. For your people with mine, it will not long remain hidden. It will be acknowledged by them, even as members of my family acknowledged. Who's the them? Like Great Britain's leadership, right? Even as the members of my family acknowledged after they have tried me for several years. If the people join me, as I expect they will, the sufferings they will undergo, unless the British nation sooner retraces its steps, will be enough to melt the stoniest hearts. So basically, he's saying, if you don't make this change, and we take this nonviolent action, what is Gandhi proposing will happen?
It's going to be really tragic.
It will be tragic, but also it will melt the stoniest of hearts. Who else is going to know about this? Yeah. I mean, not only Great Britain regret their decision, but the whole world will know what you did. If you don't give in to us, and this becomes violent, and we die at your hands, the world will feel for us. They will not feel for you. That's not a threat. It's logical reasoning. Right? He logically reasons his way through.
Could you use logical reasoning as a choice?
Yep.
Okay.
Those are those if statements, right? If this happens, this is what we'll do. If you do this, this will be the output. That's like an if-then statement, right? So that's a reason. If this happens, I logically can tell you that this is what's going to happen in response.
Is that like cause and effect? Like,
It could be. This is the cause, then this will be the effect. Yeah, it could be. Yep. The plan through civil disobedience will be, so notice, right? Like we're still doing this will, right? Will be to combat such evils as I have sampled out. If, do you hear that? Like, do you hear that repetition of if statements? If we want to sever the British connection, it is because of such evils. So why are we doing this? Because all the things that we have seen, right? All the things that have happened to us over several years. When they are removed, the path becomes easy. Then the way to friendly negotiation will be open. If we want to sever the British connection, it is because of such evils. When they are removed, the path becomes easy. What is the they are removed?
The evils.
The evils, yep, the evils. When these evils are removed, then we can talk. If the British commerce with India is purified of greed, so here's kind of like what we wish. If the British commerce with India is purified of greed, so this is the accusation. Notice he's not saying you're greedy. He says, if it's purified of the greed, right? You will have no difficulty in recognizing our independence. So take out your desire for money. Oh, didn't we say they probably profit off of it? So now he's saying, when you stop looking at the profits that you'll make after us, or on us, or because of us, then you'll see why we deserve to be independent. I invite you then to pave the way for immediate removal of those evils. Notice, this is so polite, right? I invite you, not you better. I invite you. I invite you to take the test tomorrow. I invite you to follow my standards. I invite you to use my I'm going to start using that more. No, I'm not. That's a lie. I'm just threatening works for a while. Yes. Invite you then to pave the way for immediate removal of those evils and thus open a way for a real conference. Notice that description, right?
Okay, Miss Nick.
Yep.
So this would be the start of our second chunk, right? Could we?
I would say your second body paragraph.
The second part.
Yep.
Could we take this evidence and like contrast it to like the previous, like the stoniest heart? Saying,
Yep.
Like, he's giving you the worst case scenario, but he's like, but. it
Yep.
could be this. Okay.
Yep. So when you get to the second part, when you have that piece of evidence, you can contrast it to what was mentioned before. Yep. Thus open a way for a real conference between equals. How he wants them to be seen. If somebody is subjugating a group of people, do they see them as equals?
No.
Absolutely not. Interested only in promoting the common good of mankind through voluntary fellowship. Notice, voluntary fellowship, common good of mankind. That's what we are about. This is India, right? And in arranging terms of mutual help and commerce equally suited to both. So that's what happens when we're seen as equals. You have unnecessarily laid stress upon communal problems that unhappily affect this land. Now that's an accusation, or that's a cause, right? This is what Great Britain is doing wrong. Now remember, when we looked at our timing, I'm going to stop real quick. When we looked at our timing, and originally my timing for y'all has been 10 minutes to read and annotate, right? Read, annotate, plan. We're looking at this going, holy crap, like I'm going to need more than 10 minutes to read through this because it's a little bit more difficult, right? Before we would have 5, 10, 10, 5, right? Intro, body, yada, yada. No? Sorry, had to. And then conclusion. Notice I don't really need a conclusion, honestly, right? So I'm going to add 5 minutes to that. I don't really need a full intro. I just need a thesis. So I'm going to take 3 minutes from that and add it there. So honestly, what I have is I have 18 minutes to read, annotate, plan. 2 minutes to write your thesis. And then 10 minutes for your body, for each body. Does that make sense? So I would rather you spend more time reading and annotating and breaking down. Now, if you get to like the 20-minute mark here, then stop. Start writing, even if it's just this part. Give me a thesis, identify your devices. You've gotten at least to the shift, start writing. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Let's be on Canvas.
Yeah, I'm going to post it in a little bit. Yeah, you're fine. Does that make sense to y'all? So where I feel like we are taking a lot of time, know that you do have more than that 10 minutes. Okay? All right. Do y'all want me to keep going on this one?
I think we should go to the next.
Okay. So how I would plan this, right? So I would still go in and I would figure out my big idea for the first half. I would figure out my big idea for the second half, right? And then I would find my evidence. So if I'm looking at probably my my actions, my action verbs, and then I would look at my like if-then statements. And then I could go down to like his logical reasoning. So there's my extension part of my thesis. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you quickly pick out like what pieces you think would be the highest dollar evidence in the first half?
I mean, if I'm looking at the first half, I would probably, I mean, it depends on what you understand, right? If you understand something in there, then that would be like, a lot of y'all are looking at me like, I wouldn't get this without you analyzing this with me. So then you pick out whatever it is that you picked out, right? Because what you're understanding and what I'm understanding may be different. So if you're like, okay, I'm seeing the if statements, I'm going to go back and figure out what those if statements mean. If there's an if, there is something that follows it. So look for that, right? Yep.
Like what you just said, like when you were going through it, I was like sitting here and I was like before you like actually like went through and analyzed it, I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Like if that happens in the test, like.
So when you get to the end, you look at like, I have no desire to cause you unnecessary embarrassment. This letter is not in any way to intended as a threat. So if you get to the end of it, you go, I really don't know what he's talking about, but I know that he doesn't want to, he has to stand up for his people because it will eventually lead to freedom for their independence. So I know that, and I know that he's all about civil disobedience.
Yeah.
So what can I pick out in here that shows his civil disobedience? Mm-hmm. I go to that and I go look at the language, right? I can look at the language that he's doing. I can look at like, look, he's like apologizing for him. Like, I don't mean to cause you any like discomfort or harm. So when I think of like civil disobedience, I go, okay, what can I find in here that reflects that idea of civil disobedience?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for the ifs, it starts in paragraph 3.
Yep.
But it kind of like goes throughout the paper.
Yep.
So could you still reference
Yep.
the other ones?
Yep. You just want to look at like what the ideas are in each one. Like, why does he progress it that way? Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Worst case scenario. Kennedy, are you still alive over there? Okay. Worst case scenario, you have an understand and do, right? You'll have one of those. Write yourself a thesis. Even at the very least, you get done and you go, I don't know what it's saying. I don't even know where to write. You just say, Gandhi uses details, lists, and if statements to prove his purpose to Lord Orrin. That should at least get you a thesis point. And then go and analyze whatever you can.
If you were gonna do like an actual like thesis statement, like just like really fast, like what would you like? Just for like what we've already read, like what would you say?
So I would say like Gandhi presents his case in a letter. Gandhi presents his case to Lord Irwin in order for him to understand the nonviolent position the people of India are taking in order for Lord Irwin to convince Great Britain to grant them their independence. Understand, do. He does this through lists, details, contrasts, and actions and action verbs.
And that would be adding that like second.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not sure, save that extension sentence until you've written and then go back and add your extension sentence.
The extension sentence, it doesn't have to be like well thought out. It can just be like
He does this by whatever order you presented.
Are we taking out the big ideas from the thesis and just putting them?
Nope, the big ideas are still in there.
Yeah.
Yep. I just didn't do it here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like you could.
like I'm saying worst case scenario, I don't understand anything. I'm just going to do the understand and do.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if I have the big ideas, then I could still make that into like my assertions. Yeah. Good questions. Good questions.
Could you remind us what the thesis looks like again? The by two main ideas, author, purpose, and then like what like the new part that you wanted us to add? Could you remind us what it is?
Somebody want a reminder?
It's the idea to
The author does this by
And then just
That's the
like,
extension.
The choices.
Just
So
the
like
choices
logical
we make.
reasoning.
Whatever you identified here, whatever the choice is.
Okay.
And what did we learn today? Whose class did I talk about? Like if you don't know what to call something, you identify the other things, and the last thing you call it what? A detail. If you have a list and you have a semicolon and you have like compare, contrast, or action verbs, and you're like, I don't know what this last thing is. It's a detail. He uses the detail of nonviolence. It's a detail.
You can do that?
I'm sure.
I wish you would have told me that.
No, I don't tell you that this year because I don't want to tell you that now because then you're just going to use details, details, and details. Okay, does that help? Okay. Let's look at the last two. So there's two sides. I'm going to pull the easy one first. So look at the side that says 2016. This is along the directions of what I think we're going to see next or this year, right? This abstract idea, short, brief, quote, purpose, right? In 1891, Irish author Oscar Wilde observed, disobedience, in the eye of anyone who has read history, is man's original virtue. It is through disobedience that progress has been made, through disobedience and through rebellion. Wilde claims that disobedience is a valuable human trait and that it promotes social progress. So here is what that quote means. Write an essay that argues your position. And I'm going to take this out because we won't see the extent to which argues your position on Wilde's claims. That would be how it would be read today, right? So then I look at, okay, what does disobedience mean? So then I start brainstorming. What does it mean to be disobedient?
break the rules.
No, you could use yours.
Yeah, I mean, shocker, right? I said American Revolution can be used in anything. Watch, all y'all are going to walk in tomorrow being like, I used the American Revolution! Go watch, what's the history?
Heimler's history.
The what?
Heimler's history. of,
What
like,
is it?
Heimler's history of like.
Yeah. Or what's the crash course in history? Or drunk history? Like, who cares? Like, just watch, like, one of the American Revolution. Go watch the American Revolution video. Like, tonight, if you can't tell me specific things, go watch it, right? Okay. So, you're break the rules. So, what else does so what are you disobedient to?
Like society?
To government? Yep. To society.
Authority, like system.
To a system. To authority. Okay, so I'm just kind of jotting down all these things, right? Okay. Is a valuable human trait. What does human trait mean? Like, what does that mean?
Like characteristics.
Mm-hmm. And valuable means like we need it. Right?
Like
To do what? Yeah.
it expands your
Expand knowledge. Yeah. To expand experiences. And that it promotes social progress. So that means it's positive, right? It promotes social progress. What does that mean? Do what?
past ways,
Moves forward.
what has been done.
Now, y'all, this one came after the what's the one I showed you the other day that y'all were like, oh God. The polite speech and then the what? The creativity one. This was the year after creativity. Kids came out of this one, they were like, hell yeah, yes. Like, it wasn't creativity, it wasn't like polite speech. They were like, disobedience, yes. We hit it out of the park. They were like, yes. So let's hope we could get that tomorrow. I just cursed, sorry. All right, so it's the end of the day and 7 days left. All right, so social progress. Okay, so I got to take a position. So I have to ask my what questions, right? So I could work my way backwards, like what is social progress? That's all the things that I've done, right? But I have to ask my what question is, what is my position on disobedience?
Is this where you could do like your review in your like intro, right?
I don't want you to.
No?
Mm-mm. That my position on disobedience being valued as a and moving society forward. Now, I'm going to tell you, I would rather you not do 1 for yes it does, but no it doesn't.
No, like not paragraphs. Like in your, like say like.
We did that. We nixed it. Remember, like when we were doing argument, we want to say yes, absolutely, disobedience
But in these cases,
is a valuable human trait and progresses social progress or promotes social progress.
I don't want to do any like, but in this, it's just like, yeah. So just like straightforward with this one.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yep. Now, in your conclusion, you could say, even though there are particular instances where, like, disobedience has caused, more death than any social progress, as in the case of blah, 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 majority of instances throughout history have shown that the only way to progress social standards is through some form of disobedience. Now, you could qualify it and say, like, civil disobedience and physical disobedience, right? Whether it be violent and non-violent, both progress. Both are necessary.
It was like, if you go along the vein of physical versus civil disobedience, then could you break
Yeah,
it down
you could
into
say yes, like physical. So remember, like, you're planning for this. These would be like your reasons why. Yes, physical promotes this kind of like social progress, right? Physical disobedience, and then you could say civil disobedience promotes this kind of social progress. You could do that, right? Or you could divide up what social progress. You could say, like, disobedience is vital when progressing human rights. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. Like the ideas like the LGBTQ, and also, governmental laws or whatever, right? Civil rights movement, what not to write about, LGBTQ, then women's rights, right? Suffrage, and whatever else. You could talk about the redlining and stuff that's happening, right?
like children's labor.
Children's labor, yep.
You could have like American Revolution and that leading into how after that the Romantic movement formed for American culture, and that leading into Thoreau and his book on
Yep.
civil disobedience.
Yep.
You use 1984.
You could show the disobedience, but then what progress was made?
None.
Well, you could like. I was saying, Caroline, was like you could technically explain your evidence in any way.
Yeah.
Because like if the reader hasn't read.
Well, you could assume that 1984 they've read.
Okay.
But I mean, if you look at like social progress, you could look at it in the veins of like Winston and his own social progress, like his personal social, like personal progress. Yeah.
They could also also take it in the vein of inspiration of what not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other side, right? That disobedience doesn't really do anything.
I would do like
Yeah, but if that's your
the
argument, I mean, it
Greensboro
works.
sit-in.
Okay. Yep.
That is like non-violent sit-in.
Yep. So what I'll do for these and for the Gandhi one is I could put up samples if y'all want to look through those tonight. Okay, so let's look at one more, and I just want to show you one that would suck. One of the first year student orientation initiatives at a local university is to collect incoming students' cell phones and keep them for 48 hours. The purpose of the initiative is to give students an opportunity to integrate into their new school culture and make friends on campus. Carefully consider the effects of this initiative and the extent to which they might support, complicate, or contradict its intended goals. You won't have those choices. That's why I didn't really give us to us throughout the year. But it would say, like, carefully consider the effects of the initiative and argue your position on the initiative, right? And then you would actually look at, like, how does it help create it? How does it complicate it? How does it... Does that make sense? But do you see how the ones that are more about you, that are wanting, like, personal stuff? Yeah, let's pray that we don't see this.
Like, I don't even know what you.
But you start and you go, God, why do I need my cell phone? What do I need for my cell phone? Right? Like, so then I go, okay, I look at my expertise and I look at my level of expertise and I go, okay, for my cell phone, and what is the purpose, first of all, of student orientation? Freshman orientation in college, what's the purpose?
You feel more comfortable.
Get them used to it. Get them comfortable moving around campus. Get them used to talking to people, to have a group of people. Because you may have people that are coming to the campus that doesn't know anybody, right? Is not coming with friends. So we're trying to create that. Where if the whole purpose is to get you to look forward to this campus. This is your first time being independent, right? So if you're constantly on your phone, texting, tweeting, tiki-talking, right? Then am I able to do that if your face is constantly in your phone, right? So then I go, okay, how else do I use my phone? Like, how would it help to support it, right?
Also, like, if you're coming in and you don't really know anyone and you're, like, on your phone all the time, like, talking to your old friends, and you're not going to be, like,
there you go.
socializing with, like, new people you're going to meet.
So look at this and don't go, oh, crap. It's one of those. Go, where can I find my way in? Now I start looking at the abstract ideas, right? Student orientation. Look at your rhetorical situation. What's the purpose? What does the college want to do? What do you as a student want to do? Right? How do I use my phone? How do I not use my phone? How does that interact?
For evidence, do you have to be like overly specific to get higher?
I would try to be at least, like, for something like this, I would try to at least be, what you would do is you would use anything that you do in class, right? Like sitting in a high school class, how many people are on their phone while the teacher is giving important information when there's questions that come up later that have already been answered, but you've been on your phone, right? So you can say, like, in everyday class in high school, we always see where this creates this kind of situation, right? So then it would just have to be personal examples.
That's fine.
That's
as long
fine.
as you make it.
Yep.
Couldn't you say that most people like actually want to like make new friends and they wouldn't be on their phone just
Yeah.
to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, like, I would take this and go, you know what? As the college person, right? As the college person running this, I want to make this so good that you don't even have time to be on your phone. Listen, that's what I do in class, right? I'm so freaking good that you can't afford to be on your phone while I'm up here talking. Other teachers, not so much. But if I'm talking and I'm teaching, you don't even have time to be on your phone. Right? So you could toot toot. So you can do it that way, right? You can look at it that way. So yeah, when you get something like this, you have to look at, like, who are the stakeholders? Like, who are the people that have a say-so or are impacted by this situation? And then look at all their perspectives. As a parent, oh my God, my baby's gonna go to college for 2 days for orientation and I can't talk to them for 2 days. Okay. No. As a parent, I'd be freaking out. Right? I'd be like, oh my God. So then you could offer solutions. You know, the college will end up, because there are parents that are going to be concerned about their, 18-year-old, 19-year-old going off to college. The college will have to find ways to communicate and to show the parents your kid's still alive, they're still here, right? So you want to look at, like, where are the problems that would happen with this? Where are the solutions that I can offer? Who are all the stakeholders that are involved in this, right? That's kind of what I want to look at. Same thing for creativity in schools, right? Who are the stakeholders? Parents, schools, teachers, curriculum people, right? Colleges that are going to be looking at these GPAs, like all those things. Like, you want to look at, like, where are my stakeholders? What solutions can I offer?
So,
Why are you talking now more than you do in class? First of all, hello. Go ahead.
I don't know.
You're awake now?
Yeah, I'm awake now. So,
I have our 7th period, by the way. Go ahead.
now I'm nervous. So can you, like, actually, like, I mean, you can, like, use, like, factual stuff, like the social, like, dilemma thing, like, all
Yeah,
that. Is that,
yeah, the social dilemma would be cool to put in here, yeah.
Okay, so I was just, like,
It's that documentary about Facebook and about, like, everybody being,
but you would just have to make sure to, like, bow tie it in really well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's come to so many.
I know. And I don't know, like, the only thing that makes me nervous is that this was one of our practice tests, but also it's not worded with the stable wording prompt, so I don't know how valid it is.
Like, what school would do that? Like, it just makes it seem like we just so, like, you don't trust your own students.
Okay, well then that's the other thing that you look at as another school, like, hell no, we're not doing that, because if that university, if Arkansas is doing this, kids will literally not go there or skip orientation, right?
Well, then, like, I think from the student's perspective, like, student orientation, I would think, especially freshman orientation, you're meeting your classmates for the first time, so wouldn't you want to maybe try to get some contact information, especially if you're potentially meeting, you know, your roommate for the first time, if it's, like, random roommates.
There's also like games that
So-
they might play or like technology. There's
Right.
a lot of
So, like, gaining contact info through your phone, taking photos.
Well, we'll give it to you after 48 hours. We'll give you a Polaroid camera, you can take pictures all the time.
I think really
It
this
just
makes
makes
like,
it seem like, sorry.
well, I think this makes like a hostile attitude when you're coming immediately onto the
Okay.
school, where they're being
See,
really
look, y'all are like, this is so hard. And now if you look at all the stakeholders, look at what people have.
At the same time, there's also the aspect of, like, there are people, including myself, who get very nervous, like, in a huge crowd of people, and I can guarantee that at a freshman orientation, there's a bunch of people there, and so a phone would probably, like, help, like, with the nervous interaction.
Oh,
and, like,
absolutely.
it's a much more calming, presence.
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
they're making it seem.
Absolutely.
Smith, did you say you were gonna put this on minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. We're about to wrap up anyways. All right, any other questions y'all have for tomorrow? Did I help? Did it make it worse? Okay. Do you have any other questions? All right, y'all may go. I am going to, before I leave,